Now, one of the biggest things I notice with people waxing their boards is they kind of drip tons of wax everywhere and stuff like that, and it makes a right mess. So what you actually want to be doing is think about a flow and a sequence, almost like you're riding down the hill. So if you think about this kind of shape. Hi everyone. So I thought, as we're going away next week to Austria and I'll be prepping myself and Sean's board, then I'll just kind of run you through some of the basics of what I do. So then that just gives you a bit of a heads up of what you might do to prepare for your own holiday. So we're only going away for a week, so I don't need to do anything too hectic, but I just wanted to show you just some of the basics, the basic kind of tools that I've got and things like that, and then just looking over the boards and some of the simple things I would do just to make life a bit easier when you're on the piste. So if we're looking at my basic kind of toolkit, so I've got some base prep wax, and that's the main thing that I use, and pretty much I probably just use that at the moment, just because that gets into the base real easy and stays really well. I've got just some cheap data wax that if I did want to kind of clean this up, I can show you just a real quick way, instead of using a base cleaner, to kind of get rid of some of these ingrained dirt stains. In terms of my basic toolkit, so let's have a quick look, shall we? So what we got here, so we've got some clamps if I need to do some base repairs, so if I need to kind of clamp down anything that's kind of lifted and stuff like that. Sewing kit in case I need to sew up my gloves, P-Tex for filling, some super glue. Araldite dye is the main thing that I will use just to kind of sort out any big gouges and anything that needs kind of clamping, so they would work together. Got some boa spares, some basic binding spares, just odd little bits and pieces. Lighter for the P-Tex. What we got in here, so dubbing for gloves, worth kind of using that. Edge cleaner, which is good if you get little rusty edges and stuff, that's worth doing. I just keep my board lock in here just so I don't lose it. Fine file for just deburring, so if you do feel there's any kind of little burrs on there, then you can use that. Edge tool to sharpen edges. This kind of big heavy duty file is what I use for getting rid of any excess P-Tex. New file, just a plug basically if I've got my other waxing iron there. A couple of things for kind of park shaping rakes there underneath. Scrapers and different waxes if I want to get technical, so for different temperatures of snow. Buffing cork if I really want to get super glide on, quite essential. Little brush, so once you've scraped your wax, brush, get some structure in there. Another kind of scraper, a bit of old P-Tex on there just from when I've been doing a little repair, and just little extra bits of wax. Board tools. Yeah, so that's the basic kind of kit setup. You've got iron with adjustable temperature if needs be. In terms of setting up a place to work, so I mean if you're indoors then you're going to need to cover the ground because you're most likely to kind of drip wax on the floor and stuff, and it's not going to be easy to get off, so definitely worth having a covering. I'm outside, it's nice and easy. You know, if you've got the facilities and you've got the equipment, you can use one of these kind of bench clamps which will go on, so you can have the board kind of horizontal or whatever and vertical, so that makes life a bit easier. But typically, you know, like here I've literally just got a couple of dip bars and I'm just in the garden just chilling. You could use a couple of chairs, something like that. Just, it doesn't need to be complicated, you just need a surface that's going to be relatively grippy, so if you are scraping the board isn't going to move much, but yeah, you don't need much else. So decent waxes are going to give you a temperature for your iron if you've got a tech iron, but you can use any old iron. I've used like a £5 one from Tesco's before. It doesn't need to be crazy tech, but if you want to get a little bit more kind of involved in the process, then yeah, you can match the temperature of your iron to the temperature of your wax. So what I'm going to do here is just look to get rid of some of this black staining and stuff. You can see almost it's kind of lifting a bit, but what I'm going to do is hot wax a little bit. I literally just hold the iron on. Just going to hot wax over that zone a little bit, nothing too extensive, just get it a little bit warm. And then whilst the wax is still warm, I'm going to scrape it. Now you can see all the kind of dirt and stuff like that just comes straight out of the base, which is good. So if you want to kind of clean your base and get any kind of ingrained stuff out of it, then that's a quick and easy way to kind of sort that. So we're going to have a quick go at that now, just get the rest of the board kind of just pretty clean really, so we start from a fresh base without having to base clean anything. So for most things you guys do, you won't need to stress too much about trying to have this like perfectly groomed board and all this kind of stuff. Typically for riding in the UK, with the snow, there's a lot of impurities in the snow from the constant kind of grooming and stuff like that. So what I've found is that if I do wax my board for the UK, loads more impurities get into the wax, and then it actually slows it down, it actually makes it worse. So quite often for the UK, you know, you've got limited turning and, you know, limited riding and friction and stuff, and all those impurities in the snow mean I don't really bother waxing my board for riding in the UK. So just leave it as is. As you can see with this one, done a few weeks on it, you know, it's dry, but it still runs. It doesn't, I'm not feeling like I'm losing speed or it's affecting anything with my performance when I'm in the dome. So in terms of this board getting ready for the mountain, so what we're going to do now is just use this base prep wax just to give it a good coat and just get it set. Now you can get more tech, you know, if you've got time, remove the bindings, because quite often when you kind of do up the bindings, that will kind of draw in and create these little pockets in the base, which means it can be a little bit more difficult to tune them. You can kind of feel there's a little bit of a dip there in the base, so it can kind of draw that in. So if you can be bothered, do it. But I found overall, like, I don't really do it that much. Like if I really want to get tech again, then I will strip everything down, clean it, edge, all that kind of stuff. But just for this, I just literally just need it running a little bit better for 1 week's worth of riding. Then I'm just going to get it relatively clean and then wax it and scrape, get it prepped that way. Now one of the biggest things I notice with people waxing their boards is they kind of drip tons of wax everywhere and stuff like that, and it makes a right mess. So what you actually want to be doing is think about a flow and a sequence, almost like you're riding down the hill. So if you think about this kind of shape coming in, that means I get a nice consistent flow of wax, a consistent amount. I come through and then I run along each edge like that. And generally what I'm doing is running the iron on the surface real quick with the wax, and then I get that nice flow down the board, and then I'm not wasting loads of wax, I'm not having to scrape loads off, because the idea of wax is basically you want it in the base, not sitting on the base. So with a sintered base like this, it's kind of like pores of skin. So as you heat up that base, then it opens up and that allows the wax to go in, and then when it cools down, that seals the wax in the base, and then you scrape any excess off the surface. So that's the whole thing about waxing. It's not about leaving stuff on the surface, because the stuff left on the surface is going to create a friction and it's just not going to allow the board to run smoothly. So we want to warm the base up, get a nice rhythm to our waxing, let it cool, then scrape it off. So you can see the shape and the lines that I've created on the board. So it's just smooth and it's not loads. Yes, there's a little bit of dripping, but it's not crazy. It's just because the iron was quite hot. So now that we wax it, we should get a pretty decent and consistent kind of wax across the whole board. Keeping a nice flow. I'm not trying to stay in one spot for too long. Otherwise that's when you start melting bases and stuff. And what you're looking for is the dry patches, and you're just literally pushing the wax. You've got a bit of pressure on the iron. You're just pushing the wax around. Keeping it nice and flowy. Try and get to the end of the nose and tail. Push that through. Now the big question is, how long do you keep kind of waxing it for and stuff? So generally what you're looking for is, if you start to feel the heat come through to the top sheet, then you know you're pretty much there. But for me, you know, what I'm doing is just literally getting it nice and fluid. You can see the way the wax is kind of warming up and cooling down. Once I've kind of run it over a few times, that's pretty much it. I just don't need to overwork it. So I can feel underneath. Can't feel anything too hot. Feel a little bit on the nose there, but nothing crazy. And now just let that cool off, and then I can scrape it, and you can just make sure, just before you finish, just make sure there's no kind of obvious spots that you've missed, but that should pretty much cover it. So once the board has kind of cooled down, you can feel that it's nice and cool, then you can start scraping it, and it's really easy. Just literally get stuck in. Metal scraper can be a bit damaging if you're not used to using one, so plastic one can always be a little bit safer if you're just kind of getting used to using it. It's going to make a bit of a mess, so yeah, if you've got something on the floor, or you can just brush the wax into a bin. Once you've kind of cleaned off all the basics wax, given it a good scrape, then just give it a little buff with a scouring pad. That just cleans away all the basic wax dust that's left, and it allows you to inspect the board a bit more closely to make sure there's nothing that you've missed. And then you can either run the edge file, which you may have seen, or you can run your nail across the edge just to get rid of any residual build-up of wax which has been left there. You just see a little bit coming off. Cool. And then you can take your structuring brush, as it's kind of officially called, and literally, to be honest, people, you know, you can kind of go super tech and go, right, I'm going to put kind of microscopic edging in the wax and things like that, you know, by doing straight lines from nose to tail like that. But I found it's not really made an arse of difference, so I just buff it. And then if you do want to give it just a little polish to finish, just use the cork, and you can rub on, and that just kind of just polishes up the base a bit more, smooths out any little imperfections in terms of the wax. And then you're done. So it's not perfect, but it will definitely do the job for what you need, which is just a quick week away with minimal stress and minimal mess, hopefully, although I do have a bit of crap to clean up. So I'd say the key takeaways from this is don't stress too much about waxing your board for riding in the UK. Yes, it helps, but it's marginal gain, so I wouldn't overly worry too much about that. When you're going away, definitely worth waxing your board. Hot wax is going to be better than, they kind of call it a hot wax in some of the shops, but unless they're getting an iron to it, it's really just like a heated brush that's just going to buff the board really. So it's typically not going to do too much to help your board glide. So what you really want to be doing is, if you can, wax your board with an iron, get it kind of sorted, and rather than dripping loads of wax everywhere, you want that kind of glide motion just to make things super smooth. Use less wax and just get a nice kind of consistent coverage on the board. That's pretty much it really. It's not rocket science. There is a guide that I've got if you want to get uber tech about tuning, because I did some border cross competitions and stuff in Europe, so you really needed to be super fast for that. So there's a few hints and tips in there if you really want to go ballistic, but for most of our riding, just keep it simple. You know what I mean? A good basic wax is gonna sort you out a treat. You don't need to stress too much. It's just a few little tweaks here and there that are just going to make the process a bit easier, a bit smoother, and the results be a little bit better. So have fun. I'll catch you later. Bye.